Adam Tap, I was electrified on February 28, 2018, and nearly died. I was resuscitated after 11 and a half minutes of death. I've been a paramedic for 20 years and find carpentry therapeutic. I use it to release emotions. I used a microwave transformer to etch wood using the Albert gadget. You remove all safety features from the transformer and connect it to a 110-volt AC power socket to create 12,000 volts DC. It's risky yet makes gorgeous coral wood patterns. We etched wood beside my business after having a beer with a good friend. He had done a high-voltage safety course 2 weeks previously, which was very helpful for us. I was talking to him while moving the electrodes when reality snapped. The anguish was terrible, like every cell in my body was being torn apart. I couldn't fathom it because it was overpowering. It felt like everything had stopped, and I could only see these vertical iridescent green cylinders. Amidst the turmoil, I thought, I'm being electrocuted, and felt like I was falling for decades. After a slumber, it was like waking up somewhere familiar. It was pitch black like deep space, with twin queen star-like lights. As if I had become a single point of consciousness. I saw spherically from a single point outward. I wasn't atom or dead. I was just consciousness in utter contentment. I existed in this state for what felt like an eternity, without regularity. I felt fractal designs, rainbow iridescence, and a merger of thoughts, sentiments, and emotions pour over me. I felt ripped apart and deposited into everything, becoming part of the cosmos. Nobody was afraid or worried. It was only the inevitable journey back to infinite consciousness or complexity. I got electrocuted again. I wasn't aware, but I was defibrillated. Heart spasms caused ventricular fibrillation arrhythmia, which required 2 defibrillations. I was defibrillated, which takes 0.5 seconds, but it seemed like minutes of being electrocuted again. Later, it stopped, and I realized I'm Adam, electrocuted, and in this emptiness of just existing. I stayed there for a long time, maybe coming to terms with myself and the cosmos. I was electrified again, which was the second fibrillation. I remember feeling pulled out, or something like that, and then I think I smelled burning flesh, which was my hands. My finger was burned off, and I had third-degree burns all over my hand. The 8-hour coma was wonderful for me, but difficult for everyone who thought I was brain dead. I woke up in the ICU with a lung tube and an intraosseous needle in my shoulder. I wondered, how long has it been? With bandaged hands, I wrote 8 hours or something. It amazed me. I would have been right if told it was 5 or 10 years. It was unique because once I was extubated and hugged by everyone, I looked at myself and smelled myself. I have natural pheromonal smell, which we all have as primates. Our efforts to conceal it are extensive. But I was so hyper-aware of my smell and skin texture and felt so strongly that I was demoted from this insane supercomputer to this Commodore 2000 with a pixelated screen. I remembered that for ages. It felt like months of this. I told my wife, this isn't real, like this isn't real. She seemed worried, but I ultimately accepted being in my body and in this location. But I had a strong impression that this is merely a step, an evolution of consciousness. Our current situation is temporary. There were no anthropomorphic figures or robed individuals. It was just returning to the limitless consciousness that surrounds everything. The gap between subatomic particles is awareness. I wasn't interested in reading about near-death experiences. I didn't want to shift my perspective on my experience. But I had classic photophobia, where I wore sunglasses 24/7 like Corey Hart. I was practically blinded by house light. Another intriguing thing is that my hand burns healed faster. It was fascinating because everything revascularized and started healing quickly after I was told I needed skin grafts. That may not be a common occurrence in my condition, but it was a process of growing used to what I now term a monkey suit. My biological limits limit me. However, it's so lovely that I can sense emotions. I learned that when I was bodiless, I was acutely aware of the anxieties and strange feelings that swirl through us at any given instant. The hormonal and biochemical mechanisms that make us do things were quiet. When I was back in my body, I felt these emotions coming up and didn't know what to do with them because I seemed to have disconnected from everything that was this biological mechanism of this atom and was now back into this full. After that, I started taking psychedelics, and I think death experiences are so closely linked to these secular chemicals and diotrope in our bodies and brains, which cause death dreams. I feel incredibly spiritual from the event. I guess I was superficially spiritual earlier in the sense that we use the word without realizing its deeper meaning. But it's almost like witnessing limitless consciousness and becoming part of it, then returning to this and still knowing we're part of something so profoundly complicated and exquisite. One thing I've learned from all of this is that my personality has changed and that I can now appreciate a moment instead of planning or meaning it. Language is just being present and appreciating. I see that with my daughter a lot, just being in a space and enjoying it. I also want to stress the similarities between psychedelics and death. One may argue that my death experience was an endogenous dimethyltryptamine release, NMT, and subsequent psychedelic experiences have been similar. They may have been more deep than death. I would respond that death is possibly the most natural thing that happens if someone asks me what I learned from this or what counsel I would provide. Not being alive was easy. It was perfect, beautiful. Being alive is hard. I believe death is just a passage. Infinity is coming. It's becoming cosmic fabric. Being perfect. Perhaps we're all perfect, but we refuse to admit it. Being dead was perfect. It's understandable that we all fear death. Genetics drive it. What we are today wouldn't exist without our fear of death. Yet again, death was perfect. It became everything and was wonderful. I think it spiritualized me. I used to be spiritual but superficially, but now I feel like I know what we're all about and where we're going. That reduces our daily fear. To conclude, death was perfect.